we've hit a bit of a problem. It was all going great, like it was going brilliant. We just put in the flooring literally just now, and Eddie decided last night that he was going to take the van to go to work, which he did, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, mind you. He started driving off, realised for some reason his fog lamps weren't working, or his lights in general, just after after putting the floor in, which we screwed into the floor. So he turned around, came back, and was worried that we'd screwed in like into a wire, which just means that it's going to be horrible, because if that's the case, then all the wiring is going to be like, you know, frayed, and we're going to have to completely replace it, and it would cause too many problems.
All day I believed that we'd screwed into some wiring when we screwed the floor down, and then after I got back from work, I looked into the van to see if I could see where I'd screwed down into through the floor. Top tip from the future reference is always check where you're screwing before you do screw in, because I was about that far off my fuel tank, which would have been a lot worse than just some electric wiring. But I couldn't see anywhere that I'd screwed into any electrics, apart from these 2 trenches along the bottom of my van. So I thought maybe in these trenches were some electric wires. That was my only logical conclusion, was that in these I must have screwed into some electric wires in the trenches. So we decided to rip the floor up the next day. We ripped the floor back up, that we spent ages putting down, and grinded away some of the floor of our van, and saw inside the trench just to have a better look around and see what was actually going on. And we could see that there were wires in there, but we couldn't see anywhere that we'd screwed into them. After a lot of problem solving, we found an access panel underneath the van that went into the channel where the wires were. We pulled that access panel off, and it was quite clear to see that the problem wasn't that we'd screwed into the wires. The wires were actually burnt and melted all together as if there'd been a fire.
We pulled out one of the wires, and as we pulled it out, there was just a mess of like all these melted plastics from where we were welding, and turns out the entire wall in that trench was completely charred as well. So there was a big fire underneath that we had no idea that ever happened. There was a lot of smoke while we were welding, and as we were welding, we were just putting out the front fire, the fire that we could see, but we didn't realise underneath the entire trench there was this roaring fire just burning away at all the plastics of the wiring. So we've just taken that out now, and we've had a look at it, and all of the coloured wires that go to each different type of light, like the indicator and so on and so forth, they've all melted into one, which is creating a ground. I think it's a ground for the entire vehicle. So when one goes on, it just, I guess, short circuits and basically causes nothing to happen. And because of that happening, it's also blown a bunch of the fuses in the van.
As you can see, if we take a look under the van, there's 2 trenches that had the wires in that powered the rear lights and that. These wires would then go up the side and into the rear panel, and this is the area of the van which caught fire in one of those trenches, and so all the wires in this area were just charred, and that was what caused the electrical fault. So just so you get a clearer picture of this.
We pulled all the wires out. We could see this section about a bit over a foot long that had melted together and was charred and kaput, really. So we cut that bit off, and I needed to find some wire to replace that length, otherwise the wires just wouldn't reach from the front of the van to the back. So I went up into the attic and found some old audio cables that I wasn't using anymore. I pulled them down from the attic, stripped the wires there, and cut them to the length that I needed for the section that was kaput, and then I started to solder them in place. So I just dipped them in flux, strung them together, like tied them together, and then used soldering to solder them together. It's pretty straightforward for any electrical engineer. The hard part was actually trying to get the wires back from the front of the van through the trenches to the back of the van. We had a string that went all the way through. Unfortunately that snapped while we were fixing some of the holes, so we had to like sort of wiggle the wires from the front of the van through the trenches, pushing it and pulling it through until we managed to get it all the way through right to the back again. Took us a full day of soldering and fixing wires when we actually found out what the problem was.
And it's going good so far. It's a bit of a setback. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I'm worried that we'll not be able to get this done within the time we have. But it's yeah. So that was the problem that we encountered. So welding near those trenches is always a thing we have to try to remember not to do in the future, or at least be very aware of it, because it's going to cause a fire that we won't even see. And there's only 2 trenches as well, which the wires go under, and it's just on both sides of the van. So hopefully in the future that won't happen again. Quite a shocking end to the day, but also a good one because we've learned a lot about how wiring works. So I'm sort of in an odd situation where I'm happy but I'm sad, sort of annoyed but relieved with the fact that like we know more about our van now than we did when it didn't make the fire, if that makes any sense.
Personally, I blame James. I think it was his fault. No, it wasn't James. He was the one that did the welding at the back, but there was no way for us to tell that it was setting stuff on fire inside the van. James did get a bit worried when we found all these problems with the van and thought we might have to take it to a mechanic, but I tend to find that there's always a way to like fix it yourself, and it's always cheaper to try and fix it yourself. If you take it to a mechanic, they're just going to do the same thing but charge a bomb. So fixing it yourself is also a better way to get an understanding of your van. Like I feel now, having solved the problem, that I know a lot more about how the wiring works in my van. I know exactly where the wires run to and from. I would never weld a part of the van that could cause wires to set on fire again. So you got to learn from these things and just sort of move on. It did set us back a few days. It took us about 5 days to put the floors in, and then we spent about 4 days fixing the wires. And there's still, at the moment, there's still a couple of fuses that have gone, and an engine warning light has appeared on my dashboard whenever I drive, so we need to get that checked out. I'm still hesitant of taking the van to a garage to get that fixed because they'll charge a bomb, so we're going to try and fix that ourselves as well. But hopefully that's just an electrical short or something that's caused it for the light to come on, and then something's not right. But hopefully it's nothing too major. I've checked all the oil and all the components of the engine, and they all seem fine. The engine's running fine, so it should be all right.
Overall, the van, I think, once we put the floor back in, we should be set course on our way to start putting in the furniture and the kitchen. and all the other parts that are essential for this journey across Europe. And I'm looking forward to it. It's just a shame that this sort of set us back, you know. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's not good. But it's a really, really educational experience on how to work and function a bloody car, which is I'm happy about. So we'll keep you in tune on what's happening. Hopefully we will, you know, get through it. Let's see what happens in the future. Let's see how this goes down.